All right. Well, appreciate everybody for joining us today. As you saw in the advertisement, we have a bit of a celebrity on the line with us today. Not myself, John Felico. Want to give you a little bit of background about John and a little bit of, as you saw in the advertisement for this conversation, the goal is that you leave here with some actionable points to take to your business, and not just generic quotes of go get them. It's actual dive deep questions that we're going to dive into. So, just to give you a little bit of background around John, John and I met, I guess, over the phone when you were first exploring opening Augies, and from the get-go, I could tell that he was asking all the right questions. And prior to this call, prior to this, we were just talking about what we can talk about in this conversation. And I think you're really going to enjoy the depth of the thought that John puts into the business. And again, John's based in St. Augustine. Augie's is as you saw in the advertisement, has been sold. He's no longer the owner of Augie's. But yeah, just gonna dive right in. John, did you have anything to say before we get started?
No, let's just dive in. So I'd ask some questions. I'd like to help out whoever I can.
Awesome. Oh, I see a Washington, Edmonton, Alberta. Look at that. Nice. We got all over the Pacific Northwest is covered here, it looks like. So one of the questions that I thought was fun to start out with was, when John started his business, was the intent to sell it? And John, I don't want to take the words from your mouth, but if you want to kind of start with that, and then we'll just keep going a little deeper on that question.
Whenever I open up a restaurant, or any business for that matter, my thought is how to position my business so that at some point in time I could sell it in the future. Most people, when they decide to sell their restaurant, generally it's failing at that point, and they just want to get out. I don't look at it from that point of view. I look at it, how do I build my business? Let me back up. In our industry, we all know it. Everybody that's on this call right now know that it's hard. We work 60, 70 hours a week. When we want to be home with our family, unfortunately, we have to be at our business. And burnout is real. It happens. I have been in this industry for 40 years. And I can tell you that I could count on one hand of the thousands of people that I've met. I could count on one hand the amounts of people that still own the same restaurant 10 years later. Maybe the same restaurant might be open, but it's not going to have the same owner. It's a very hard business to be in. We also know the stat that 50% of the restaurants will fail within the first couple of years. And that's all because burnout is real. And you have to prepare for it. If you're not, you won't be able to get out when the getting is good, so to speak. Everybody looks to sell their restaurant. Anytime I've ever worked with somebody, or one of my franchisees, when I had my franchise company, every time they wanted to sell their restaurant that was failing. And I'm going to tell you right now, nobody wants to buy your failing restaurant. So from the beginning, if you treat your restaurant so that it can be sold at any given time, and what I mean about that is you have to have your records in place. You have to have everything. You have to make your business look like somebody can just walk into it. Make it look easy, make it look fun. If you do that from day one, at any given point along the way, it'll be easy for you to put it up for sale.
And what I failed to mention, drafting a dream, which I think anyone that's on this call, hopefully you've heard of it. We're going to send a link out to it at the end. I believe that should be required reading for anyone that's opening a business, a tap room, a self-pour tap room. But I just spent some time with one of our ex-employees, Duncan, who opened up his own self-pour tap room in Sydney, Australia. So I think he's the first to have John's book in Australia. Maybe, I don't know. He's an international bookseller. But yeah, the book. What the fun thing about the book is he didn't have. I don't think a sale was even in the horizon when you were writing the book, which would have been a nice. It would have been a nice book end, to the whole thing. But maybe there's another chapter, you can squeeze in there, right? But yeah, so going back into the questions, when you talk about, setting up a business to sell it, let's dive deeper there, because that's interesting to me. And, one of the things that you had mentioned before was, specifically the lease terms that, if you can jump into that section of the I'm setting up a business to sell it.
I will, but actually on your first point about adding that extra little chapter, and I don't know if you knew this, And maybe we can give everybody a link to it. I also do some writing for Modern Restaurant Management, an online magazine. And I wrote chapter 13 for the book, which was the sale. And it talks about everything kind of like we're talking about now, the 10 steps that if you want to sell your business, the 10 steps that you need to do to sell your business. I kind of call it the director's cut. It's and Haley, maybe we could just send out a link to that and everybody could just read it. I mean, it's on the internet, it's free. So
Nice.
that's out there, and it'll kind of help everybody talking about the same thing that we're talking about now. But what you had mentioned about when you want to sell your business, you want to obviously get the most amount of money that you can. Talking about lease terms, the reason why you want to have 10 years lease, the reason when you're ready to sell your business, if you go to your landlord and say, I'm looking to sell my business, can you give me 10 years for the person that's coming in there? The reason you want that is it's going to open up SBA financing. And if it does open up SBA financing, it opens up the amount of people you could sell your business to. It's really that simple. And most landlords would love that because they get to actually jack up their rent, which is what they want to do.
And just specific to that, if if you'd be willing to share what your rent was when you opened up Augie's, and then the progression, because what was the term deal you had when you originally signed?
We had two 5-year leases when I opened. It was $10,000 a year plus some fees on insurance and stuff like that. And I happened to get a very good deal at the time because a hurricane had just hit St. Augustine, and the landlord had a lot of spaces available. So he signed me up to those 10 years. After 6+ years, I went to him and told him I was selling the business, and he said he loved that idea because again, he was going to be able to jack up the rent, and they jacked it up about 70%. I didn't have most rents, and everybody will know this. There's kind of goes up a percentage a year on commercial leases. I didn't have any of that built in there. I probably would have been up to that much rent by now. So he was very happy.
Did you say 10,000 a year?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And that's yeah. I wish 10,000 a month. I apologize.
And what does that translate to in per square foot? Do you have that?
We were 1,900 square foot, whatever that math is.
Okay. Yeah, just trying to, help our listeners apply that math to their own, lease situation. I'm sure there's other, I'd like to go a little deeper on some of the other pillars that you set up to, to sell the business or to be ready to sell the business. I think one of the ones you talked about is keeping the finances clean. I don't know if you could dive a little deeper into that part of the conversation.
Many of us, when we open up you're here, you want to own your own business, so you can start writing off stuff yourself. You can put your kid's cell phone on there. You can start going on vacations and adding all of that into your business. The reason why you don't like to do that is when you're selling a business, you don't want to give your P&Ls or your numbers to somebody and say, disregard this line, disregard this line. This stuff is you don't want what they call clawbacks to kind of pull it out of there. You want to just show them clean records that you could show your tax, that match your tax records, that match your bank account. You want all of your records to be clean so that when they see them, you're not having to explain anything. It just makes the sale go easier.
Have you, in your experience, have you seen deals, I guess, go south when the finances are sloppy?
I had a franchise company where we had 175 franchisees, and yes, many times, because they just could never, it never reconciled between the bank statements, the tax records, and the numbers and P&Ls. They just never could reconcile them, and the deal went south.
And not to, I guess, let me jump into some of the other questions that have been posed on the thread. But before we close out today, I definitely would like to dive deeper on. I don't know. Before I do jump to the next topic, John, were there any other pillars that you feel are, I guess, worth mentioning when it comes to setting up your business to sell?
Yeah, there are a few things, and we'll probably get to them in questions, but I'll hit a few of them now. There are no shortage of people that want to get in the restaurant business. Everybody thinks about opening up their own bar at some point in time in their life, or opening up their own restaurant at some point in life. They all fantasize about it. The problem is they're intimidated. It's scary to do something like that. And they're right. It's a hard business. They want to be able to walk into your business and look at it and say, I could do this. You want to keep it by creating great systems, processes, and checklists. You can make a business that just kind of flows simply. Also, believe it or not, for everybody that's on this call, self-pour makes it less intimidating for somebody to buy the business. because they don't have to, they're looking at it like, I don't need a lot of employees. Well, they do need some, but it just looks less intimidating to somebody that's getting into the business. It was a huge selling point when we sold ours. By the way, we put our business up for sale. When we put it up for sale, within an hour of it hitting live, we had 3 offers.
No, that's it's impressive.
Tells
And
me I
yeah,
didn't ask them.
I mean, it's like selling a house. You're nervous, and then boom, you get offers.
Exactly.
And they weren't. Hopefully, they weren't insulting offers either. They were
No, they were all full price.
nice. That's good. Yeah. So some of the questions that popped up, prior to going here. One, and some of these are quick hitters. So feel free to answer them. With self pour, are tasting samplers allowed? Do you recommend offering tasting flights?
Um, it's a good question. The answer is yeah, sure. You could do that. I don't know if it'll move the needle for your business much. It depends on what your concept ultimately is, but self-pour, it actually is already a sampler. In my experience, customers will walk up to the wall and they'll start taking 2 ounces of every beer that's on the wall or whatever you have serving on the wall, and they do their own kind of sampling themselves. And that's what kind of adds to the vibe of the place. The more customers you get standing at the wall talking about the wall, the better vibe you have in your place. And that's what's so brilliant about it, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, it's that's definitely a fair point. I think one of the questions that's popped up in the chat, but also on here, was the I guess the structure for evaluating your business. Like when and then also, where did you actually sell it? I remember you told me the quick story, but
To value your business, the rule of thumb is, and there's also obviously a lot of factors, but generally the rule of thumb is whatever your gross profit, whatever your net profit is, if you have a 10-year lease, it's going to be somewhere about 4 to 5 times that. If you have less than a 10-year lease, for every year that's less than a 10-year lease, kind of take 10% off of that. For every year more than that, you add 10% to it. It's really kind of that simple, not an exact science. It also might depend on your assets and things like that, but that's just for the sale of the business. I forgot what your other question was.
it was, where did you actually sell the business? Like a brokerage firm? I think they approached you, right?
They did. A buddy of mine had a cigar store across the street, and it was kind of his last day there, and we were all visiting there, celebrating the sale of his business. And his broker was there, and his broker said, would you like to sell the business? As I said before, burnout is real in this business. You have to be prepared to sell the business at any time. So if you do that from day one, it just makes it easier if the opportunity ever comes along. I had this business for 6 years, which is much longer than I generally would own a restaurant for. I would have sold it by now, but I was partners with my son-in-law. And it was really a good business for him. He was making a lot of money. But I went to him, and in this business, it's 70 hours a week. It's a tough business. And I said, is it time to sell? Here's how much I think we can get for it. And he was ready to sell. Went back to the broker, and there's 1,000 brokers. You can go call them. They're going to charge you anywhere from 8 to 12% to sell your business. And you go. I went to him and said, let's sell it. And a week later, we had it up for sale.
So I guess that's the going rate. I imagine you had closer to the 8%.
Maybe.
Nice. Let's see, another one of the questions was, let's see, sorry. There's a question about and I know you were a sole owner, like there was no outside investment for yours. Have you structured that with other deals where you brought in investors? And if so, did you structure it for shares, or do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, my other business now, I have partners in there, and you own whatever percentage you negotiate up in the front at the beginning. I don't know if that's the question they're asking. Is that what they're interested in?
Yeah, I mean, they were asking, let's see, how do you value your business and bring in potential investors or sell shares of your business? Which, I think that question can be sliced 1,000 different ways.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what you're looking to do. It all depends on where you are as a business. So you're bringing an investor in because your business is failing and you need money to help build it up again. If that's the case, investors is going to get a lot more of your business than if you have a super successful business and you're looking to just expand it. So it's a hard question to answer without more information.
Yeah, and definitely I would feed into Chat GPT and just even asking. I've seen it done several ways, and I could follow up with that individual. One of the questions it's a fun one. Is what are the best ways that you found to market your self-pour tap room and the best strategy when it came to marketing and promotion?
That's actually a harder question to answer than you think. I'm not going to dodge it. I'll give you an answer, but I'm going to tell you why it's a harder question, because every market is different. Every concept requires different marketing. Everything requires something slightly different depending on where you are. But I'll tell you exactly how we marketed. I'll give you like the 4 or 5 best things that we did for Auggies, which seemed to work phenomenal for us. Definitely moved the needle on each one of them, even though sometimes it's a slow roll. The first thing is in our new world of social media, it's not new anymore, but I'm old, so it's new to me. You have to post 3 things a week. You have to. I know that it seems like you're going to be shouting in an empty room at the beginning, but you have to make 3 posts a week, and they have to include pictures with each one of them of your employees, of your food or your beer, and of the customers. Like you just said, go into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will make your 3 posts a week. It's not that difficult, but you got to do it. It starts to build momentum after a while. The other thing that you want to do as far as social media, you need to create an environment where customers want to take pictures in your facility and post it. The tap wall is a great thing to do that. It does do it, but that's not enough. You have to create other things. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Oh, I'll give you one example of things that we did in Augie's. Augie's was a sports bar. So we had sports memorabilia throughout the entire bar. And what made it unique is I had 200 pieces of signed sports memorabilia. When you walked into the corridor, there was every Super Bowl winning quarterback in the corridor when you first walked in, all signed. I can't tell you, every day somebody would take a picture with themselves, like a selfie with their favorite quarterback. And they would post it on their social media. Creating things like that actually work. In the bathroom, we had a sign my wife said it one day, that why does everybody have to poop in our bathroom? I put a big old sign that says poop at home, people. I swear to God, that thing is online all the time. Just funny things like that gets people kind of engaged, and they start doing things like that, start posting things like that. I also, the second thing that we did is we gave an industry discount, a super industry discount. I mean, people that work within 2 miles of our place, we gave them 50% off on the food. That sounds like a lot, and it is, don't get me wrong. But all of a sudden, the woman who's cleaning the rooms in the hotel across the street is telling their customers to go across the street and get food. Or the guy at the cigar shop is telling everybody to go shop at us. You are creating word of mouth incredibly fast by giving that discount. And by the way, the amount of goodwill you're creating is off the shelf. When you're doing coupons, now I didn't do a lot of them by us because most of them were tourists and they weren't going to be grabbing coupons, but we did some in the travel magazines. Always do a buy one, get one free. Do not do 10%. Everybody on this knows that you don't go out of your way for 10%. You just don't, but you will go out of your way for buy one, get one. The last thing that I did, and I have a whole bunch of things, but these were kind of the biggest things, is the first year for Christmas, from Thanksgiving to New Year's Day, I put a snow machine up on top of our roof. It cost me $125, and we shot snow up the top of the roof for 10 minutes every day between Thanksgiving and New Year's. The first year, not a soul. So the snow was just falling on the floor. By this past December, there was 200 people waiting more every day outside of Augie's, camping out, just waiting for the snow. And you want to talk about a moment that people are going to bring to social media. It's snowing in Florida. It's not real snow, but it really looks like it is. And everybody's taking that picture and posting on their social media. That's the kind of media that we did, and it worked. And by the way, all of that costs you nothing except for giving some food away.
Do you think the new owners are going to keep up the snow machine?
I don't know. I don't know how good of operators they're going to be. We'll see. You won't know until they open, but we'll see.
As you were talking about, I guess just the discounts that you would give to local industry people. Did your team have that in Toast, like so you could track how much you were giving out?
Yeah, we had a button that said industry discount.
Nice. So like on average, what percentage of your sales was industry discount? Like, is there a number roughly a month you would say?
I don't know what the number was a month. I don't have that on the top of my head, but insignificant, maybe a couple of points a day. It wasn't a lot. You know, there's not
Nice.
that many people. You know, maybe
Right.
there's
And you get credit for
300,
the
400 people.
you get credit for the offer even if they don't take you up on it to some degree, right? It's like,
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
did you go to each business and tell them, hey, like here's my business
For
card, I'm
50%
John.
off your food, that word gets out there quick.
Okay. How did you validate that? Did they just say, hey, I work at, Armando's down the street?
At the beginning, yeah, people will say that, but you just get to know the people in your market. You just after a while, you just know. You know,
No.
there's not that many people that work near you.
I like that tactic. Did you ever use I'm just kind of curious, did you ever use the hotel room card marketing? One of our customers, they went to every hotel that they knew the RFID room cards worked with the tap wall. And they would say, hey, any of your guests that come, they would, offer a buy one, get one or something like
I
that.
had seen, I don't know who said it, but somebody mentioned it on one of the webinars or something that you had before. The like 6 hotels that are within a few block radius of us, they all didn't have that card.
Okay.
I mean, some of them were using literal keys still, which I thought was
Yeah,
interesting.
that is funny. Let's see. One of our guests asked if, let's see, is there success between, or I guess, does the sale price of the business change based off of it being a restaurant versus a bar?
No,
No.
no, absolutely
Um,
not. The bottom line is the bottom line.
nice. Let me see. I'm going to pull up another question. How do you manage the constant rise in taxes and wages?
Not really sure what they mean about taxes, but I'm going to tell you, wages it was a real issue, is a real issue. You know, from when we first opened up Auggie 6+ years ago to when I sold it, our per dollar hourly wage more than doubled. And that's a real thing, and I don't see that changing in the future. It is a concern. It should be a concern to everybody that's on here. But that being said, half the battle has already been conquered when you have self-pour. And this is Josh paid me to say all this, by the way. No, the truth is, the reason I love self-pour is that you don't need bartenders. I took that one step further when we started selling food. I turned this into a quick service restaurant where we didn't have waiters or waitresses either, just so that we would have a lot of employees, and that reduces the amount of money that you have to pay people, amount of people that you have to pay rather. And what we did is we actually gave the existing people a little higher wage, so I can get better people. And we were always still able to stay below the industry average for wages. So that I mean, this you can't get a better system to have lower costs of wages than a self-pour, in my opinion.
And you didn't have any other way to get beverages at your facility or at Augie's other than self pour, correct?
We did have, so we had an behind the counter. We had a beer case just for kind of odd beers, something that you don't sell a lot of, you know, things that you wouldn't be putting on the wall. But you know, 90, not more than 95% of the stuff came off the wall.
And then were you or Corey or who was responsible for, I would say, keeping the taps rotating with, the latest greatest, or like partnering with breweries and having them host or have, samplings and things
That
like
was
that.
mostly, it was me at the beginning, and then Corey learned how to do it, and it's fairly simple. You know, I mean, it's not a big deal. A lot of people put a lot more thought on it than they have to. The truth is, one of the biggest things, it probably doesn't even come anything to do with your question, but one of the biggest concerns I had is I wanted to put 50 taps at the beginning. And I'm sure you would have preferred I put 50 instead of 24. The reason I put 24 is I never sold beer before in any of my concepts. The reason I put 24 is I went to all the bars and started talking to the owners and the bartenders, and they say that after 3 months, a keg will go bad. The reality is, in a self-pour environment, a customer will literally try every single one. You do not have a keg that lasts more than a couple of weeks. It got to the point where we even stopped buying the slims. We only bought the halves,
I
just
was
because.
just going to ask if you did, because that's kind of the natural progression,
Yeah, you just go through it. Even beer that might be too highly priced, or I mean, if we had something that was real high in price, I mean, we'd put fun things on it saying, you need a credit app to buy this beer. But everybody would still try it. If it's $1.50 an ounce, they're like, I'll try an ounce. They'll do it. You can't have too much of it. You got to satisfy everybody. But people
Right.
will do it because they want to try it. And if it's only a quick pour, they'll do it, and you'll go through it.
And did you track when it came to like number of people visiting your establishment on a daily or weekly basis, percentage of repeat customers versus new customers, or percentage of rewards members or mug club, anything like that?
I was a repeat customers. Our repeat customers are very small because I'm in a tourist town. The only time we ever got repeat customers is, and we grew up, we grew our Sundays for football. That's when we really had our only locals coming in there. So we really didn't track it. It was, especially during the week and on Saturday, it was all tourists, all tourists.
So when you talk about the sports, though, did you adopt a team where you were the Gators bar or the or I mean, I guess Jaguars, but
I tried to adopt the Jaguars, but they're so bad nobody would ever come see them play. But again, because
should have been an Eagles bar. You'd had,
I know. We get a lot of Eagle, but but that's the interesting thing, because we are a sports bar. People will log on and try to find their team locally, because if they're in St. Augustine, they're not going to be able to see the Eagles. They're not going to be able to see the Browns. So they're going to find a bar that has that. So they would come to us.
How many TVs did you have, or
15?
Or 15
We started
TVs?
with 10 and we grew it to 15.
So were you using like NFL Ticket to show multiple games?
Absolutely.
Okay. So would you say that was a good investment, the whole NFL Ticket kind of package, or?
Ultimately, 100%. I mean, I recommend everybody do it. And the reason why people give up on it so quickly is the first year we did it, I swear I was the only person on some Sundays watching the games. By this last football season, if you didn't get to my place by 12 o'clock, you didn't get a seat. You had to stick with it.
Now, did you guys take reservations too, or no?
No.
No
We
reservation.
had big signs that say everything's communal seating. And
Nice.
when the people would walk in, because I would greet them, or I'd have somebody always greet them, because you want a wall ambassador, but also somebody that greets them. When customers walk into a place, especially that we have so many tourists and not a lot of regulars, you want to be able to make them feel comfortable. The beer wall can seem intimidating to them, so you want to make them feel comfortable. So you want to talk to them as soon as they get in there. But also that we were such a small place, and although we had big tables, we had seating for 99. People didn't want to. If I had an 8 top and 2 people sitting on it, somebody else didn't want to sit there, and we would just say, "Hey, these people are sitting with you," and just move them all through. It just made it more comfortable for the customer.
Nice. Kind of a change of pace. Brooke Huffman was asking, did you ever consider paying employees just more and removing the opportunity to tip?
That's exactly what we did.
Oh, okay. So there was no
That's
tipping
exactly
at all.
We actually, no, we did at the beginning. We did have tips, and minimum wage. We were paying people minimum wage. I think it was like $8 at the time. And with the tips, it was coming out to about $11 per hour on average. And I just went to the employees and said, listen, it's very difficult to figure out the tips, because you have one point of sale, and you might have 8 or 9 people running around. And I said, instead, why don't I just bump your salary up to this, and we'll just keep the tips in house. And we continued doing that till the end. In fact, when we sold the place, our average employee was making $20 an hour. They would share the cash tips.
You did still get tips, but I guess you kind of paid the tips out as part of the hourly wage and just kept them.
It was it was much easier. Yes.
What was there a delta there? Like if there was ever like an extra 100 on top, or how did you? I guess I'm just curious.
Because we paid out the tips for the first 6 months, and when I decided let's do it, because it was a nightmare to figure out who worked what hours, when, who gets the tips, who doesn't get the tips. It was a real pain to figure out. We figured out the average tips per hour for the first 6 months. And we just said, everybody, I'm going to raise it that much. Are you good with that? And everybody agreed. If they all didn't agree, I wouldn't have done it.
Now, I guess not questioning your decision there, but what prevented you from just saying, we're going to just raise the price of our, per ounce or our burgers and go that route versus even giving them an option to tip?
That's a great question. Now that you say that, I probably should have done that.
No, it's a conversation that's happened a lot in the industry. And I think Danny Meyer experimented with that. District Brew Yards is one of our customers that's all in on, no ability to tip. And then they also have a sign that says, here's why we don't tip, and they point at the sign or whatever. So
that actually would have been a better idea. I didn't think of it.
What was I going to say? One of the guests was asking how you priced out your beverages for your tap wall. I think you probably had a similar equation, but I'll let you answer that question.
when you're pricing it, obviously you want you want your food costs, your product costs to be under 30%. That's a given. So you kind of start there, but beyond that science, beyond that math, when you price things, you want to price things the amount that people expect to pay. And what I mean by that is if you go to a Greasy Spoon and you buy a burger, you expect to pay $10. If you go to a 5-star restaurant and you get that same burger, you expect to pay $25. So the experience that you create can determine how much more you can charge above just getting your 30% food costs. And so it's really almost art form at that point. You know, everybody knows you go into a restaurant and you end up with a bill that's $150 and you're angry because you felt you paid too much. But you might go into another restaurant, you pay $150 and you feel good because you felt that was a bargain. And so that's what so I hate to dodge the question, but it really is a science. I mean, an art.
That's a fair assessment. One of the questions here was around employee turnover and how you manage that throughout the history of Auggies. And maybe a good way to go that direction is how many people were required to run run Auggies at, like how many people were on payroll, how many people needed to be there on a daily basis during the weekend, and then were there people that were there for 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years throughout the stint of Auggies?
Those are all great questions. Employees are the bane of our existence. We have to have them. Unfortunately, all your employees are going to quit at some point in time or be fired. Just look at every employee and know at some point in time they're going to be gone. Like, you have to put that into your equation immediately. The moment you think that an employee is incredibly loyal to you and they'll never leave you, they are going to leave you at the most inopportune time. You can be friendly with your employees, but they are not your friends. You have to have that mindset. You have to have that mindset. All of our employees, we treat them well. We pay them a good salary. But here's the other part of it. As soon as the employee can get you under their thumb, you've kind of lost that battle. And I go back to something I mentioned before, and I'll probably mention another 30 times. You have to run your business with systems, processes, and checklists, not by employees. You can't have the greatest employee in the world. That employee is going to leave you. Your business has to run through systems, processes, and checklists. And your job as the owner, your job as the manager, is to always be talking to your employees about, are you doing the systems? Did you do the checklist? Those are the things that you need to follow up on all the time, because what will never leave you at the most inopportune time is your checklist, is your systems. Every employee, as you saw, banging it into their head over and over again. And never, I've literally had employees have to come back the next day because they didn't do their checklist, and they came in just to do their checklist. You just have to do it. If you don't do it, your business will fail. A checklist, your processes and systems make your business consistent. Consistency is even better than great. If your business is consistent, customers feel comfortable, and that's your job, is to make the customers feel comfortable. And you want to keep, and that's the trick about employees. And interesting enough, when employees have to think less, it puts less pressure on. At the end of the day, when they finally have to just start following the checklist and you get it in their head, they're more comfortable working there, and you can actually retain better employees.
I heard something recently that made me think of you. It's kind of the ChatGPT AI version of creating a training platform. They said, they had a great employee that was kind of the welcomer, the greeter, that show them how to use the tap wall. And they said, they put in their 2 weeks. They said, hey, I've got to go off to college or whatever it was. They said, would you mind recording yourself doing everything that you do? And then, it would translate the audio into words, and then it would take the words and consolidate it into a playbook and a checklist. And I was like, wow, that they took a process that could have taken a few days, maybe a week or two to put together, and consolidate it to like less than a few hours,
Right.
But when you sold the business, I assume they got the playbooks, they got the checklist, they got everything that
We
came
gave
with
them
that.
everything. We gave them 2 weeks worth of training, and now it's up to them if they're going to follow it. And we'll see what they're made of, if they do it or not. I have no idea.
You'll never guess what's being asked in the group. Would you be willing to share some examples of those checklists? Through the Pour My
Every
Beer.
one of them is in my book. $10 on Amazon, the electronic version.
There you go, $10, it's yours.
Actually, and in there too, I have something that's even more important than all the checklists that I have. I have my 16 rules that I created to running a successful restaurant, and they are it's 40 years of just my entire life creating those rules on how to run a successful restaurant and bar.
Love it. I
No
love it.
self-plug.
Well, and then I guess just the training process of, when you're onboarding a new team member, that's all in that playbook. And I'm sure also in the book, like
It is
specifically.
incredible. If your business is running off systems, processes, and checklists, onboarding somebody is simple. And also I mean, I am very, I call it the simple foundation. You want to keep your menu simple. Obviously, if you're having a high-end menu and that's who you are and what you're creating, that's not the type of restaurant I have. And by the way, it's probably not the restaurant that most of the people that here have, or bars that they have. You want to create a foundation of simplicity so that you can plug and play people in it. It's much easier if you have that. Everything is just kind of intuitive. Just follow the checklist. Here's the systems. Mirror this person for a couple of days, and shadow rather this person for a couple of days, and you'll know what you're doing.
So one of my favorite breweries asked a question. Scott Hoffman, his wife
Ah, my
Cindy,
buddy.
he was asking, what was the transition period like for the sale of your business? Was it a direct departure? Did you have to stick around for a few weeks? What was that
It
setup?
was, we had to give them 2 full weeks of training. So we gave them two, it was supposed to be 40 hours a week, but we actually gave them about 60 hours a week. And on top of that, we brought them back of the house to learn everything that we did back of the house, as far as how we did our paperwork and all that stuff. But again, it's a very simple business. They kept most of the employees. I don't know if they'll keep them ultimately, but they kept the employees who were just part of our system.
Nice. Um, Another question, kind of change of a topic, but it was, how do you get buy-in from guests that are not comfortable with technology for self-pour?
Um, Okay. First, again, it's important to have an ambassador, somebody at the wall that's going to make people feel comfortable. Most of the people don't feel comfortable with the tap wall because it's intimidating. But as you and I know, as everybody that's on this list, you know how simple it is. Once you kind of get them going, they really start to love it. But the ones that don't love it, the ones that just refuse to want to be part of that, they're not your customer. They can go. I mean, you can't be everything to everybody because it makes your place less special. You're a self-pour tap house. You're going to get those customers over time.
Right. I think I know the answer to this question, but someone asked a follow-up to the discount for industry, like an industry discount. That was just for food, right? That wasn't for
That wasn't for
beverages.
beer. That was just for food.
Got you. Okay. All right. Let's see, this kind of goes with the how do you create a must-visit atmosphere with self-pour wall? Do you lose the bar atmosphere since you only have tables versus a bar to sit at?
That's actually a great question. It's probably my biggest concern before I open. Now that I've owned that I owned it for 6 years, it almost feels silly that I asked that question. I'm not calling anybody silly, but I'm going to tell you why. If that bar atmosphere where where you have a bartender on one side and somebody on the other side, and they're saying, how was your day, and talking to you like that. If you had that going on in your bar is not busy. That bartender's not working. That's not what you're trying to create. You're trying to create a bar that's busy. Now, let's think about at a busy bar, you might be one or two people deep in that bar. The only interaction you're going to have with a bartender is when they finally catch your eye, they're just going to point to you, not even say a word, point to you because what do you want next? And that's the only interaction you're going to have with that guy. On the other side, if you're in a super busy night and you have self-pour, the customers are next to each other and they are talking with each other. Something that never happens in a regular bar. They're actually having a conversation while they're pouring their own beer. They're talking about the beers are on the wall. They start asking each other what towns they come from. It creates a whole new environment that I never anticipated. I never thought that would happen. And then also, if you have your ambassador, although your ambassador is not serving beer, the person that's working that's working the draft room, it's almost as if they're in a cocktail party. They're going from customer to customer and just talking to them. And it doesn't matter how busy that you are. I mean, you can have three deep at the well, you never have three deep. It just doesn't work that way. But it just works. It's a actually much more friendlier environment than a regular bar. And I never anticipated that. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you, there have been times I've seen 12 or 13 people at the wall at one time. If you had a regular bar, you would need 12 to 13 bartenders to serve that many people at once.
Yeah. No, I always say a little tear forms in my eye every time I go to one of our locations where it's super busy and there's literally nobody waiting. Like everyone has full glasses, half
Exactly
glasses,
right.
whatever, and the wall may have 3 or 4 people on it, but there's just everything's a 10 to 15 second transaction, so there's never a chance for there to be a line. So the reverse side of that is when you go to a busy, brewery, bar, whatever, and you can't get a drink. It's like, why are you doing this? It's such
Exactly.
one of the questions was around your food and beverage percentages. If you're comfortable sharing what that mix was, and then also where your, I would say, sirens would go off when it came to beverage costs, food costs.
There's a lot of things I can answer that. First, let me take a side note. And I don't know how many people are on this, but you have the opportunity to create something that's very rare in this industry. When we first opened, I had visited Tapsters, and I talked to Roman recently, and I made fun of him about this. When I'm sitting there at Tapsters, he doesn't serve food, and I said, why don't you have food? His exact quote was "F food." I thought that's what I wanted to do. I mean, who would? That's the holy grail. You just have 2 employees and you can have a $10,000 night. I mean, everybody wants that. Unfortunately, that Tapster's location was conducive for that. When I opened up in St. Augustine, I had to have food because they required me to have food just to get my liquor license. But I sold some fried foods, nothing much. We just had a fryer. But we needed food. I mean, that was the fundamental mistake I made when we opened it. When I opened that location, I assumed it was a vacation town, which everybody would think St. Augustine is. It's actually not a vacation town, it's a tourist town. The fundamental difference in a vacation town and a tourist town, a vacationer is a couple of steps away from your place in this hotel, and they can come in your bar and power drink. A tourist town, they're driving 2 hours to your place, and maybe they'll have a beer or two, but they're leaving. The other thing that happens in a tourist town is they don't make reservations when they come to that town. They just think they'll figure it out when they get there. That made it obvious for me once I realized that I made that little fundamental error, that we needed a quick service restaurant in our place. And that's what we did. We landed on hamburgers. I could have landed on any quick service restaurant, but we landed on putting a quick service restaurant, a hamburger joint in our place. And that took our business to an entirely new level. Not only did our food sales go through the roof, but our beer sales went higher too. And to go back to your question, we were 30% beer to 70% food. And here's where that kind of rare thing that you don't see in the industry. I challenge anybody to find a fast food restaurant, a quick service restaurant that successfully sells beer. And what I mean by successfully, to have like it be 20 or 30% of their menu. I challenge you to find one. You might find one here and there, or a small chain here or there, but you just don't find that. In the self-serve environment, it works. And I'm shocked how well it worked. I mean, to sell 30% beer in a fast food restaurant is impossible. It's unheard of. And I don't know if I answered your question, but
So you said the breakdown in food versus beverage costs. Let's just say if it's $100,000 a month, how much is food? How much is beverage?
well, if it's $100,000 a month, I'd be upset. But it would be $30,000 in beer, and $70,000 in food.
Wow. Okay. And then your food costs, I guess that they would hover what in
I
the
always added mine together. I wanted my food costs, my product costs, my beer, my food, my soda, not paper goods, but our goal was to always get that under 30%, and we did.
under 30%.
Yeah.
Okay. Did it ever creep into the 30s and you had to like go in there and
Oh
kind of
yeah, absolutely, 100%. I actually told a story when I was promoting my book. I think it's like my third or fourth rule. It talks about controllable costs. And it was when I made the transition from being active all the time, when Corey, my son-in-law, took it over, and my daughter Rebecca was working in the back of the house, and they noticed the food cost went to 36% that first month. Instead of panicking, they literally went to rule number 3 in my book, controlling your controllable costs, and they were able to fix it. Unfortunately, for food costs and why people have so much trouble fixing their food costs, it's not one thing that you could point at that's causing your food costs to go up. I like to refer to it as death by 1,000 cuts. It's a little theft. It's maybe somebody a little heavy-handed in the kitchen. It's maybe the supplier creeped up your food a little bit. You have to attack all of that at once to fix it. And you could do that. You could tackle all within a week. You could attack everything and get your food costs in control.
So you have your food costs, your overall food beverage
Products,
costs in the 30% range. You have your staff cost, I don't know,
22%.
22%.
That's our goal. Yeah. And we
Your
always
your
use that or lower.
your your rent and operations, where did that
Well,
and
the
you rented,
intermediate
you
goal
didn't
is
own.
10%, but with our last year we grossed 2.3 million, and we paid $120,000 in rent, so we were way below that.
Yeah, no, that's really low. I've heard, I think that is 8% is kind of anything above 8% is not.
Your goal is to immediately get to 10, but yeah, then you want to start getting lower than that.
Got you. Yeah, no, that's let me see. Another question that's popped up a few times is, are you hanging up your gloves, your cleats? Is there another self-pour journey in the future here?
I don't know. I don't know what it's going. I am getting ready to do my next. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm getting ready for my next project. I will say though, working with Corey, he was never in the food service industry, and kind of mentoring him was one of the most satisfying things I ever did in my life, and I might look at that more. I really enjoyed working with working with Corey, and kind of watching the light bulbs go on. He's going to definitely open up a restaurant after he finishes his hiatus.
Someone asked if there was ever an interest in selling it to him, like in a buyout manner, where it's like you sell it to them and they're paying you, to own it over a few years, or was that?
No, and I've done that, but no, he was able to walk out with a lot of money. He was a partner. He walked out with a lot of money, and
So he was an equity partner in the
he was an
business.
equity partner. Yeah,
Was it sweat equity?
it was. Yes.
I'd be curious, like, and then not to go too deep on that or share anything too personal, but what have you found to be a good structure for that type of relationship where you're now it's unique because that's your son-in-law and I mean, you want to see your son-in-law do well, but you also like structuring it in a way where I don't know if it wasn't your son-in-law, would you structure it the same way? I guess the equity, the
Yes,
sweat equity
I
piece.
would have. He had nothing at the beginning. He when we first opened, he was making $52,000 a year as the general manager. And I gave him 4% of the sales, so long as his food cost was under 30% and his labor cost was under 22%. And eventually, as we started making more and more money, I raised that to 75,000. But he was making, I mean, he was making 200 grand a year in that structure. And then when it came time, and at some point in time, I think it was after 2 years, he got a percentage of the business.
Nice. Did you have to change any legal documents for that, or was
Yeah,
that all
that's
okay?
simple though.
Yeah. Yeah, the question was that one of the questions was whether you bought the real estate or you leased it, and this is a lease. But have you ever owned the real estate in any of your?
Not in any of the restaurants I've owned, but I did buy a bunch of real estate when I to put my offices in, and I made a lot more money selling the real estate than I did selling the business.
That's
I tried to buy mine, but the guy wouldn't sell it to me.
yeah, I guess that was because Augie's a standalone. It's all by itself, right?
It's all by itself. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
he didn't sell it to me. He owns 63 pieces of property in downtown St. Augustine, and they've been in their family for generations, so they're not selling them.
and so with that, I guess did you connect with him and he with the idea of Augie's and he was like, I have a spot for you, or like how many other places did
No,
you look at?
when I decided that I wanted to open up a self-port tap house right down on St. George Street, I would walk up and down that street every day until I saw one place go up for this available. That was in a good location that I wanted. And everybody, please do not settle on bad locations. I know we all think our concept is so awesome that it's going to make it everywhere. I'm here to tell you it's not. I've tried a bunch of times and it's so much harder to open up in a B or C location. Just pay the money, open up in an A location, and your life is just so much easier.
I think I heard at a Dunkin' Donuts franchise meeting, it said you don't have to, you're not going to get every location right, but you got to get the first one right.
That's right. That's right. In fact, a couple of years ago, and I don't know if you remember this, I mentioned that I was going to Orlando for something to you, and you said I have an operator there that needs a little help. Would you mind stopping by and kind of giving him some words of advice? And I stopped by there, and if you might not remember, I say his location was so bad that there was no way he was ever going to make it. And sure enough, he lasted another. It was so bad, that location.
Yeah, the second floor is not usually a good sign for your business, nor is it to be like kind of in a crevice where it's not off a main road. Like it's yeah,
And that
that's
was him.
yeah. So I think not to defend his situation, but he wasn't fully focused on that. I think it was kind of one of those things where he had this printing business and he was like, oh, I'm going to do this self-port thing.
That's him.
So you gotta put the energy into it. Um, One of the questions was, let's see, when Augie's first opened, it struggled. I think you had mentioned it only was grossing about 200,000 in the first 6 months. A
Correct.
lot of operators might have folded. What specific changes did you implement that turned it around so dramatically, and how did you know? I guess part of that's the food, but were there any other big transitions?
The biggest piece was the food. It was after, I mean, it took 6 months for me to actually do the transition to when I realized that I made a mistake. And again, the mistake was that it was a tourist town. I needed two things. I needed to be able to serve food to these people that didn't make reservations down there, and I need to be able to serve it really quick. So that decision was made about 3 months into it after I kind of realized the mistakes we made, kind of even pulled open my rules and started going through all the rules that I needed to do. Unfortunately, we did fix it 6 months later. We started selling burgers, things started going up, and unfortunately, the last 6 months we did 400,000, and then COVID hit, and that was fun. We were closed for 7 weeks, but the next year it just started going up in leaps and bounds.
Nah, that's
The
what
last
was it?
December that we were open, if I didn't mention it before, we did $310,000 in the final December that I had it. We only did 200,000 the first 6 months.
So looking at kind of the industry as it is today, and as you've seen it progress over the last, 5 years, um, if you had to open up another location in the next 3 months, what what are you putting in that location that's maybe different than Augie's, but is that you believe would, is kind of like throwing the ball where the receiver is going versus where they're at, if you know what I
Right.
mean.
Yeah, there's, as I said, I write articles for Modern Restaurant Management, and I actually did all the trends for that are coming up in this year. But that's not quite the question you're asking. But the trends going forward right now that I see, it's a lot more communal. People have now are just done with self-isolation, and they want places where they can actually go and meet people, to be forced to kind of sit in a room and have a more interactive experience that's going on there. But that's where I think the trends are right now. But in the long haul, I truly believe that employees who are our bane of existence, are going to be almost gone within the next 10 to 15 years. You're seeing it now. They have bartenders. I think the name, it's called Tipsy, the bartender. You'll see it in Vegas. You see it at the restaurant show. It has 8 arms, and you just put in what you want to drink, and it makes your drink for you. They have uh, Flippy is the robot that's working the kitchen. Imagine spending 50, $60,000 for a robot, and they could do everything that your employees can do. That's where it is absolutely going. And whoever thinks it's not is kidding themselves. It's happening already. If you go to the restaurant show, the NRA in Chicago, if you go to the restaurant show, all you see are robots rolling up and down the aisles, because that's where the industry is going. And thank God, because it's unmanageable, how much we have to start paying employees. We need to start finding another way to do it.
No, that's
By the way, front floor is part of that too.
are there any other elements that you would bring in? I hear automation, I hear, that, but just the vibe, or and I think you guys did have like board games as well. That was a part
We
of
did
the
not. We
nope,
at the beginning we tried a bunch of different things, and maybe that's why you think that. But we decided to go all in sports.
all
Um,
in sports.
yeah, we went all in sports, and that really
Is that
sealed.
every sport? Like when you
Big sports fans. What was
was that
that?
every sport? Like you would promote, you know,
Everything.
uh luge, whatever, like Olympics, like it was any sporting event that was an opportunity to market, come to
When we
Augie's.
opened up after COVID, the only sport we can get on the TV was cornhole tournaments. People were coming in just to watch cornhole, professional cornhole tournaments. I mean, we just went all in on the sports. But you need to have your vibe. You need to, whether it be music, whatever your vibe might be, you need to create. And maybe I should have mentioned this earlier. the beer wall, and Josh, you created a great system. You know how much I love it. I think it's a phenomenal system. But it is just a better way to serve alcohol. And to think it's your gimmick, it's going to be the reason that people are coming there, you're kidding yourself. It's a great way. It's a great system. It saves you money. It's better. It's better than having a bartender. But at the core, you're still going to be a bar. You're still going to be a restaurant. You have to give people another reason to come there, whether it's music, whether it's sports, whatever it might be. You might be an axe bar, whatever it might be. You have to create another reason for people to stay there.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I try to stop by locations, whenever I'm traveling through areas that I've never met the owners or seen their location. And I saw one recently, and it's kind of a sad implementation of self pour, in the sense that it was kind of neglected. It was just off in the corner. There was no signage. There was no nothing about it. And they put a full bar right next to it. Within 5 feet of the wall, there's a full triangular bar. And the guy was like, "Oh, well, I just thought people would come here because it's self-pour." And both, I was like, "No, you've got to build,
That's
the
right.
processes around it." I mean, I think we have it on one of our knowledge bases was, how you executed. This is how you introduced how you greet a guest, how you train them on how the wall works, how if you see someone having a bad experience, how you interrupt their bad experience and help them to have a good experience.
Exactly.
It's just that element of like process. I don't know, like again, I wish we could just make the book of yours and a mandatory. You cannot open until you read and given us a book report on it, but you nailed every aspect of that with Auggies. Yeah, no. And one of the questions was, and I forgot to hit on this, was putting your brand together from the logo to the vibe. Like, how long did that take? I don't know. Did Auggies just pop in your head at night one night, and you were just like, "We're gonna call it Auggies because it's in St. Augustine," and and it's a draft room, not a self-pour tap room, right? So it's I don't know. I don't know if you can elaborate on that.
It's almost becomes like a marker, a board session when coming up with names. You kind of just sit around the table, and this was with the family. It wasn't with my company, and you just kind of throw names around, and you kind of hear what works. And it wasn't even so much Augie's draft room that really hit me. It was my daughter was sitting there saying, "Oh, that'd be great. You can just say meet me at Augie's." For some reason, that just sounded good, and we called it Augie's draft room. In hindsight, I really shouldn't have called it that. Because it didn't really give enough of a description on what we were. At the time, we were a draft house. It should have been like Augie's Burger and Brews, self-serve tap house underneath it. That would have been more of a description for our customers so they can look at it in a split second. But it ended up working anyway.
And kind of jumping back onto the profitability and KPIs and things like that, how much? So it sounds like Corey was the GM, like he ran the place, right?
Yes.
He was an owner slash GM. Did you have like 2 AGMs, or was it just one AGM, or just everyone else
had
was?
one AGM, but we also had a kitchen manager.
Okay. What numbers did you have them focused on, like from the top down? I mean, Corey's focusing on, I'm sure, revenue and profit, right? That's and cost of the various elements. But what numbers did you have other people in the organization focusing on or following?
Well, Corey, actually, what the things that we always focus on, and maybe it's different than what everybody else might think. Number one is ticket time. Customers do not want to be waiting around their food. It kills their experience. Absolutely kills their experience. I would literally go on the back of our line with stopwatch to see how fast things are going through. I would want to make sure that the customers are getting served incredibly fast. You want them to almost, by the time they pour their beer and sit down, you want their food to be coming out.
And what was that number? Do you remember?
From the time they ordered the food to when they get it?
Like it would put a smile on John Felico's face when he saw the ticket time, this number.
Well, it put a smile on my face at 7 minutes, but that's too quick. I would freak out when we start getting to 11 minutes or longer.
Okay.
From when food comes up in the kitchen printer to when it's actually being run out. Anything over 11 minutes. I mean, you have to think about it. We have one day a year where, and I don't know if we have a lot of time, but we have one day a year. Christmas Day is our busiest day. I was never going to open up on Christmas Day. The first Christmas, Corey and I went out there because we wanted to turn the snow on, just because we thought it would be nice. We could not believe how many people were on the streets. So I went to my employees the next year and I said, I'll pay you triple time, anybody that wants to open. Kind of changed our system up a little bit and made it that it was more of, we're just going to serve 3 items because we knew it was going to be a big line. And I'm not kidding when I tell you we would make $100 a minute. And we would be open for 10 hours. It was an
Wow.
absolutely unbelievable day. But think about it a second. If you take just 2 more minutes to serve a customer, all of a sudden you're losing $2,600 an hour. Ticket time when you're in an environment like that is unbelievably important. More important because the customers get angry. You all know what it feels like when you're just sitting there waiting for your food. We all have that clock in our head on how long something should take. And once it starts taking longer than that, you start getting aggravated. And I never want the customers to get aggravated. So that's one of the areas that you look at. The second area that you have to look at is ticket average. When we first opened our first year, I thought that people would be drinking lots of beers. I'm going to get groups of people in there. My ticket average, not per person, per ticket, per group. I thought it was going to be super high, like in that $20, $30, $40 range. It was 6 something. I mean, it was terrible. By the time we sold the business, because we focused on ticket average so much, it was up into $40, which
Wow.
is and you really have to focus on it. There's a lot of things that you have to do to improve ticket times, and I talk about that in the book. And there's tricks that you could do for that. And then, of course, you have to focus on your controllable costs. If you and that's labor costs, that's non-food product costs, and that's all of your foods. You focus on just those numbers, those metrics right there. That's how you become successful.
Well, I mean, we're at the hour, but that got me fired up just going down that rabbit hole briefly. I don't know if anyone else was taking notes as vigorously as me, but one of the questions was best practices to streamline operations, increase profitability. Read the book.
There you go.
Sorry.
And Haley, feel free to give my email address out to everybody. If anybody has any more questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay. Well, I believe that's all we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate everyone for joining us on this and listening to John and I have a conversation and answer some of your questions. I can't express enough gratitude for John for joining us again. Just what a fun conversation, and hopefully the people that join can implement some of these into their businesses and have their own selling story in a few years. So we'll share your email, John, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Talk to you soon. Everybody have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.